Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Zeldart and today I'll be showing you the process for the first half of a new illustration that I'm working on. First of all, I'd like to say thank you so much for checking out my video. I hope you like this first episode and seeing the process of how I create my artwork. I will also apologise for the time-lapse maybe being a little bit choppy here and there. I actually captured the footage and edited the clips together using new software that I'm not yet used to. So as I move forward with the videos, they will be a bit tidier and better edited and presented than this first one. But regardless, I hope you get something out of this first one and you enjoy seeing the process. So the idea behind beginning this channel and focusing on Zelda just comes from my overall love of the franchise. I grew up with Zelda starting from Ocarina of Time back on the N64, as I'm sure was the case for most people. And I've been an artist, using the term artist loosely, for pretty much my whole life. I've always enjoyed drawing and sketching, but I took a step away from it during my mid to late teen years before reaching my early 20s and deciding that a career as an artist was what I felt I was meant to do, so I've been aiming for that since. And I still feel like I have a long way to go, but it's a game of determination and perseverance. So without spending too much time really sort of going over my whole history, just a little bit of sort of who I am and where I come from. Outside of this, I do work as a freelance illustrator and at times a conceptual designer or a graphic designer for various projects that are mainly focused around tabletop RPG systems, such as Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder. And I've been doing that for around 5 years now, and I've found some success in that area. I, regularly get commissioned, and I've worked on various projects, and I'm still working on various projects. And I still enjoy doing that very, very much. But sometimes it just gets a little uninspiring to always be making art that's to somebody else's design and to their vision. And so I sort of wanted a separate outlet for my art that could be stress-free and deadline-free and just be something that was really for myself to do, and it gives me something fun to channel my artistic energy into. And that could be anything. But this has been an idea I've had for quite a few years now, and I've been subscribed to a few Zelda YouTube content creators for quite some time now, and I found myself starting to listen to their videos daily, whether I'm working on my art at my desk or I'm out in my car driving and I just have the audio coming through. And I've found myself just really enjoying those more than I was before, and I was starting to just listen to those daily, and they really sort of helped me discover other Zelda-related channels, and they've been really inspiring for me to try and make this actually happen rather than just being a fun idea that I'd had at some stage. And just seeing and hearing all of their content and their passion and dedication for Zelda and for the work they do, and some of the amazing theories and just overall insights into the franchise has been really, really inspiring. And it's something that just made me realize how much I love Zelda. And I felt like I was separated from the whole sort of Zelda Nintendo franchise for quite a while, and I've been really getting back into my Nintendo roots after just so many years of being like a PlayStation gamer, and it's been a lot of fun sort of rediscovering all the things I've been missing out on. Okay, so enough about myself, let's get to talking about the illustration. So, as you saw at the beginning, I was really just sort of blocking out a general pose of what I wanted from this one. And I actually have a folder somewhere on one of my hard drives that's just full of countless numbers of work in progress artworks and just unfinished pieces from over the years. And so my first idea for the first illustration I wanted to do for this channel was to take one of those old ones and finish it off, which is still part of the plan. It is still something that I want to look at doing, but I really wanted to take the chance to just start fresh from the beginning and just go from scratch, just because the way that I would do artwork on the old files as compared to how I work now has changed. As any artist would know, just over time your process changes, your style will change, and just your general workflow changes. And so I wanted to do something that sort of marked where I was now, rather than sort of trying to pretty up an older version of myself and my art. So I just wanted to start with just a basic character illustration, and it just seemed fitting to start with Zelda. I've been listening to a lot of the Breath of the Wild sequel theory videos lately, and so I've been getting very excited about that. And I wanted to do an illustration of Zelda in her sequel sort of appearance with the short hair and the cloak. And you'll see in a few moments or in a few minutes that originally I was toying around with the idea of having a background in this one. The initial idea was to have Zelda sort of out in the fields of Hyrule with the big puffy clouds and an epic sky, the rolling hills, and just this sort of epic sense and scale of Hyrule. And I wanted to have her stood sort of looking off into the distance, just with this expression of sort of wonderment and pondering the next journey and what comes next. But truth be told, backgrounds and environments are still an area that I do struggle with from time to time. Sometimes I've managed to do artwork that has backgrounds and has an entire scene or an environment that works quite well. And the plan that I'd had for this one was coming along pretty well, and at some stage I may even look at redoing this one, or at the very least doing a background to add to it. But I was starting to get concerned that I was spending too much time messing around trying to figure out a background for this one, and the line art for Zelda was pretty much done and ready for the next stage, and I was just starting to lose time trying to work a background. So without spending too much time on the first one, I decided to scrap the idea of a background and just stick with an area that I'm definitely a lot more comfortable and experienced in, which is character art. And so for this one, and probably for the next few pieces, they'll mainly be character focused. And so I decided to just do that with this one. So as you can see from the beginning, it was a very, very rough outline that I then sort of went over a second pass to work out a lot more of the sort of overall detail. And then it's finished off with a final line art. Now, the other idea that I was going to go with this one was to have the character just be fully painted, no black line work, and it would just be like a painting. And that is still something that I think I want to do with this one. But in an effort to save on time and to try to get some content made a lot faster, I've since decided to split this first one up into two parts. So what we're seeing here is part one, that's really just sort of showing the beginning stage. And the second part was going to deal with the painting area. But I've since decided that what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have a try of a little bit of a different style than what I've been doing in my Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder artwork, which is sort of almost where this was heading. Usually I sort of do a little bit more realistic, or I aim for more realistic in terms of the characters and the artwork. Doesn't always work out that way, but it definitely aims more towards realism. And with this one, I wanted to try to sort of deviate a little bit from that and find myself in a place where I could do some stylized artwork. Part of the whole creative freedom just gives me a chance to try some different styles. And as I'd sort of said earlier in the video, that when I'm working to somebody else's design or their vision, it's very much how they want things to be done. So if they've commissioned for a slightly more realistic take on their character or their scene, then that's really where I have to go. And because Zelda just generally has so many different styles, it means that I have the freedom to sort of jump between some different genres in terms of style. So I could have something that's very sort of anime inspired and very stylized, but then it also allows me to try doing Zelda in a more realistic fashion if that's something I want to explore. So with this one, I sort of wanted to try to find a nice balance between the two. So in terms of Zelda's proportions here, they very much fit in line with the sort of typical, 7.5 towards 8 heads proportions. So I wanted it to be slightly more realistic in terms of those kind of proportions, but I definitely wanted to make sure that her general appearance was more towards the stylized area. So she has the big sort of anime-ish eyes, and I was really sort of aiming for that kind of a feel, which is a sort of old/new territory for me, as I guess most artists probably do when they start out, or at least very, very early on, particularly if you're a fan of anime, is a lot of artists will begin by drawing anime. And some people will just continue to do that, and others, like myself, will find themselves hitting a brick wall when they try to go for more realistic artwork, because anime is very, very stylized. So things like proportions and scale of things is a little bit off in some ways. And so doing this one was sort of me returning to the teenage version of myself who was trying to draw anime, but with all these years of experience now. So it was kind of refreshing to sort of try and capture some of that, and I'm hoping it's come across quite well. And so, in keeping with the push for a more sort of stylized artwork, I've decided that for this one, in order for me to be able to get some content out a bit faster, I've decided to step back from the idea of painting out the lines and having this be like a whole sort of painted image. So the direction that I'm going to take with this one, and for the next few, will be more sort of character line art with some internal sort of painting and colouring. So this one actually ends at the stage where I have Zelda's line art in, and I've blocked out the different areas of her attire, and everything has basically been masked out, and it has its base colour. So no lighting or shadow work is done in this one. So I'm sort of aiming for a hybrid of the ways that I work. Generally, when I do character art, I will go the same process as I've done with this one, and I get the line art in very, 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 very nice and sort of tight and finalized. Then I mask out all of the different areas, so skin, hair, the shoes, gloves, whatever kind of things the character might be wearing or holding. And afterwards, I generally block out in values, which is what you're seeing on the screen right now. So usually the best thing to do is use reference, which is what I did here. So that way I could find the right sort of values for the different parts. So obviously her skin is a lighter value than her hair. Her hair is just a little bit darker because she's blonde, so it's just a little bit darker. Obviously the pants are black, so it's a darker value. And I generally block all those out. And once I've got the values in place, I will start to add in the base colors, generally based off of the value, because value and color exist together, essentially. One will affect the other. So for anyone who might be an artist will know this, and for anyone who's learning who may not know this, for example, her cloak right here is a dark value. So you're looking at the image in black and white, and you can tell that it should be darker. But then when you add color, you might pick a color that's a lot brighter. And so when you then look at it in black and white at that stage, it ends up being a lot different than what you had planned for. And so I make sure that all the color will get added according to the values. And so that's really where this one ends up. So far, it's basically just the line art. I have the values and the color in place. Toward the end, you just see a generic splash background that just gets thrown in, which I may or may not keep. I thought maybe to not add to the stress of trying to do backgrounds, it would just be character focused. So the next few pieces, including this one, will either have a generic background, similar to what you see at the end, or it'll just be a plain background, you know, with just like a grey, similar to what's happening now, or, you know, some other kind of variation. So I know that I probably spent more time of this video talking about where I come from and who I am, but as the first video, it just feels like maybe a good idea is just to give some insight into sort of who I am and where I'm coming from. In terms of talking about the process, there's probably not too much here. If anyone has a specific question, feel free to ask me in the comments below. But otherwise, it's sort of self-explanatory. You can see at the start, I measure out the head system, basically just get the pose in that I want, get everything to scale, everything just feeling right. And then I go in and do that second line art pass that just tidies things up a little before committing to the final. And then it's just a case of masking everything out so that everything is sat on its own layer and it's sat in its own group. Everything has been color coded and it's ready for the next stage. And so something else that you may have noticed is that the color sort of changes randomly. That's just because I tried to eyeball color from reference. I just add in what I think the color is. And the great thing about Photoshop is you can just adjust the color on the fly. So there's no need to stress about getting the color right first go. So I hope that this first part of this illustration has been interesting. If maybe you're not an artist, but you quite enjoy seeing artists create artwork, or if maybe you are a beginner artist or an intermediate artist or even an advanced artist, and maybe you just enjoy watching others go through their process. But either way, I hope that you get something out of this one, and it's probably not the most professional, high-grade video that could be made, but it's very, very new territory for me, so everything should just get better from here on out. If there's anything that you would like to see from my artwork, or you want to make a suggestion or you have a question, just feel free to ask. And I really hope that you'll consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. I'm really hoping to try to get the next stage done pretty quickly, and I don't want to go too long between uploading videos, so I will try to have the next one done relatively soon. You can follow me over on Twitter, where I try to be as active as possible. The link for that will be in the description below, and I hope to see you guys on the next one.